Hey guys. So I'm going to do a quick talk about learning to communicate, and this is largely about community management and dealing with live operations. This largely applies to every game, but more so it applies to games that have as a live service, as a live community, a living, breathing organism. So think about MMOs, think about all your free-to-play games where you have a constant life cycle about content coming in, a constant flow and ebb and flow of players coming in and out, and how important that communication to your players is, but also communication back to your dev team. So, as you can see, there's a few key points I want to make sure that's very clear. Communication, it's a very critical skill, and it's something that doesn't get mentioned enough. It starts with a community manager, it starts with a good PR team, it starts with a good communications team, and a good idea of how you want to talk to your team, how you want to talk to your players, how you want to spread the word, how you want to give information out, how you want to get information back, how you talk to your own developers, everything from external communication to internal communication. The next point is teamwork. This comes into play largely when you're dealing with your own development team. A community manager or a community director or a PR person, they're out in the wild. They're listening to PR people, they're listening to press, they're listening to influencers, listening to your consumers, your players, your gamers. What's important about this is the fact that as we hear all these feedback, whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether it's ideas, it's important to bring that communication back to your developers and learn how to, communicate with them. That way that information, that feedback gets carried out. This can be anything from bugs, it could be ideas, it could be brainstorming for future expansions, any of that stuff. It's important that you communicate this stuff well back to your development team. That way they understand how to act on it, how to actually make things better based on what your players are saying. The last one here is learning to listen. This is really important because there's lots of people out there who, we're having communication, we're in a talk, you might be in a meeting here, and the only reason you're listening is so you can give a response. That's important. But more so, you want to learn how to listen. And I say that because there's a way to do that where you're actually waiting to respond, but you're also actively thinking about how to take this forward. And that could be anything from, what you're going to do next week to what you're going to do for the next 6 months. It's an important skill that really needs to be worked on. So the first point is the actual flow of information. A lot of people understand that most games have a community person or an influencer person or a press person. You have a whole PR team. All that information goes out, which is good. You need that information going out, whether that is a press release, whether that's new content, whether that's patch notes, whatever it may be. That information going out is really important, obviously. It helps your players stay motivated, lets your players know what's happening, gets press excited, gets influencers excited. That information is super key to what you're doing as a company. On the flip side, that information always comes back as well. Like I mentioned earlier, it could be feedback, it could be bugs, it could be, hey, this idea sucks ass, or hey, this thing's awesome, we want more of this. That information coming back is super critical to your development team. You don't want your development team to be working in a funnel behind closed doors. You want them to hear what your players are saying. Ideally, you want to give them what the most people are saying about. If there's one guy pissed about something, try to fix it if you can, whatever. But ideally, you're listening to your vocal majority, not the vocal minority. The next one, which I talked about, is teamwork. This is super important as well. When you're working as a team, you're working as a development studio, whether that's 5 people or 100 or 180, it doesn't really matter. All of you guys have to be on the same page. I've seen numerous times where either a PR person or a community person, they're totally ignored within their own company because the art team doesn't think that they're doing a good job, or because the producers all think this guy's stupid, or whatever. Everyone really needs to be on the same page when it comes to communication. Whoever is talking to the public or whoever is talking to your consumers, they're the ones acting as essentially the voice of your game, of what you're doing. So your development team needs to be on the same page as you, either respecting you, understanding what you're doing, understanding the messages that are going out, and they've got to understand and listen to what you're bringing back in. If they don't do that, it's a waste, because they're very literally talking to your players, your consumers. They're the ones who are engaged with the people playing your game. And finally, and this is the one I want to spend the most time on, it's really learning to listen. Numerous times you'll see, depending on what company you're at, you'll see reports coming in, and it could be stuff based on a weekly roundup of press, a weekly roundup of key points that happen within the community, or a weekly roundup of influencers that played your game. That's all great, but if you don't read that, if you don't understand all that, it's a waste of information. Learning to listen and learning to focus on what's important is a huge skill that needs to be touched on way more often than what it is. It's great to read all that stuff. And if you read it, that's good. But if you don't take that next step after you read it and learn to act on what you've just read, that could be anything from fixing bugs to new content to taking some player's idea and actually making it happen or scoping it out. You're missing out on all these potential ideas, all potential things that help improve your overall game, your overall performance. And this goes back to games as a live service as well, right? So in a living, breathing world, living, breathing game opportunity, things change all the time. Roadmaps change. The scope changes up and down. You can have a plan you could have your 60, 80, 180-day plan. However, if the community finds this game-breaking bug, or if all your players start to leave because your last patch sucked or screwed everything up, that's horrible. If you're not telling your developers that, it doesn't do you any good. So learning to actively listen and focus on what you are trying to communicate to your team and what's coming back to you, the actual feedback, is something that, as developers or as a company, it's something you have to respect, because they're the ones keeping the lights on. If they're not playing your game because they hate the last patch, or they hate the content, or they're not excited about what's coming next, you're only doing yourself a disservice. So I did say this was going to be a quick talk because I'm trying to save some time. In summary, it's really about these three critical things, and learning to communicate I can't stress enough how important it is. Most people just think of communication as outward communication, whether it's a press release or new content or patch notes or whatever. But internally for a company, especially for live operations, it's extremely critical that you as a team, you as a full team, this is everyone from the secretary all the way up to the GMs, everyone needs to learn how to communicate and voice their opinions, voice their ideas, listen to feedback, listen to what's wrong, listen to what's good, and you have to be able to act on all of that. I just want to stress that last point enough. I really can't, because more often than not, your press people get ignored, your community people get ignored, and developers will work within this closed space, and it's a waste, frankly. They have opportunity to learn from their players, to learn from what's happening with their actual live game. And they've got to be able to listen to that feedback and act on it. That's a critical skill that way often gets ignored. That's me. That's enough. That's all I got to say. If you have questions, feel free to ask. I'll be here tomorrow, today, what have you. But just in summary, it's one of those things where communication is such a critical skill, and learning to communicate, learning to listen, learning to work together as a team based on the overall messaging. It's a skill that needs to be focused on, and it needs to be used way more often than what it is. So that's all I got. Are there any questions? What you got?
Do you have any format that you recommend to improve the communication with people handling the live side developers?
Yeah, so there's a few different things you can do. There's several different things you can do based on how your developers operate. So if you've worked in like a Scrum setting before, or weekly planning, however developers operate, what's super useful is to do like either at the end of the week or start of the week is to literally get everyone together in a room and just talk. Actually seeing people down in an office, getting some of their time and talking to them face to face is hugely helpful. That way, you as a person or you as whoever you may be, you can stress the importance of whatever you're trying to tell them, right? Whether it's like everyone's game is busted at this point, or everyone really liked this new thing we put in the game, whether it's a weapon or whatever. You stress that stuff to them face to face, it carries an impact. Obviously, you can do weekly roundup emails, weekly emails based on pros, cons, highs, and lows, those sort of things. That stuff is all very helpful as well. But truly, it's really about getting FaceTime and stressing in person, hey, this is important because X, Y, and Z. Or stressing out that, hey, this thing is something that everyone is talking about. Or, hey, this was brought up in every single news article. It's like, these are things we have to talk about and need to fix or need to change plans on. A weekly meeting is literally FaceTime, whether it's weekly or bi-weekly or whatever. FaceTime, as I've always seen, make the most impact in terms of actually getting someone to act on feedback or act on whatever people are talking about.
Just follow up with that, you have like 20, 30 people that would be involved in the meeting?
Yeah, totally. It totally depends on the people as well, obviously. If people are in there just causing a ruckus or being an asshole or being loud, if they're not paying attention, kick them out because they're not doing you any favors. On the flip side, if you get higher than that, at some point, it's too many people, right? 20, that's not so bad. 30 is not so bad. But at some point, you might want to start just talking to leads. And at that point, that's fine too. But that carries a higher risk of that lead not taking that information back and sharing with, his engineer or his artist or whatever. Ideally, you talk directly to the person doing the work. That helps make things happen. But if you can't, talk to leads, stress that, maybe follow up with that person or that team individually later. But, you got to talk to who you can when you can, in person. Cool. Any other?
Hello? 1, 2. Hello? Can you hear me?
Sort of, yeah.
Sort of? Okay. Do you have any clues on how to do this over international teams where the development team is basically spread out in different time zones, countries, communication channels, basically?
Yeah, so that's definitely way more trickier. Obviously, what's awesome about today's world is we have all these great communication tools. So you have Discord, you have Slack, you have Skype for some reason still. That's still a thing. You got lots of options to communicate with teams, right? The hardest thing, obviously, is time zones, which is time zones and language barriers, right? Those are a giant pain in the ass, frankly. It's one of those things you have to make time. You have to have a dedicated time, whether that is someone will be upset, whether it's super early in the day or super late or whatever. You have to have a dedicated meeting time. You have to stick to that time. And it's harder, obviously, because you're going to be on a video call or just an audio call, what have you. But you have to have a dedicated time. You have to stick to it. The worst thing you can do is have a time and no one shows up, or you keep changing that time, or whatever. That'll end up hurting you more often than not because you're wasting those opportunities to talk to each other. Yeah, my biggest thing was either find whatever method, whether that is Discord or Slack or there's hundreds of them, Appear-in, whatever. Whichever tool you want to use, find one that you all like and you can all use effectively and set a dedicated time and make sure everyone sticks to that time. And make sure they show up. Honestly, that's the biggest thing. I've seen these things where you have a planned call every Tuesday at 4 p.m. and 2 of you show up. Well, that's sucky. That's doing you no favors, and everyone else is doing their thing, and it's busy. Everything is busy. There's busy periods, but you really have to find a time and dedicate it and make sure everyone is responsible, because that's how you guys share ideas. That's when you talk, when you see each other, or you're intimately engaged with each other, and it's important. Any other questions? Awesome. That is it. Thank you, guys.
Lance, thank you very much.